This news is funded by viewers like you. Please support our work at democracynow.org/give. We're also joined in our New York studio by Larry Hamm, chair of the People's Organization for Progress, who's running in the Democratic primary for the U.S. Senate from New Jersey in June. He's a Princeton University alum who took part in protests at Princeton in the 70s, calling for the university to divest from apartheid South Africa. Larry Hamm visited the Princeton Gaza Solidarity encampment earlier this week. He has a new memoir out also. It's called Lawrence Hamm, A Life in the Struggle. Welcome back to Democracy Now!, Larry. You are running for the U.S. Senate against the sitting Congress member Andy Kim and the labor activist Patricia Campos Medina. You and Campos Medina have called for a ceasefire, but you're the only one who is endorsing an uncommitted vote when it comes to the presidential line on the New Jersey Democratic primary ticket.
That is absolutely correct.
But before we go to that, I want to ask you about what happened at Princeton and go back in time.
Yes.
These students that are protesting and have set up the encampment are calling from Princeton to divest from Israel. Can you talk about the precedent in the 1970s? You graduated in '78. Talk about what you did then.
Well, we started a 4-year campaign in 1974 to get Princeton to divest from companies that were doing business with the racist apartheid regime. For the first 3 years, we protested, we did educational activities. Then in the 4th year, 1978, we intensified our activity, and we had 66 days of consecutive protests at Nassau Hall that culminated in a takeover of Nassau Hall on April 14th, 1978. 210 of us went into Nassau Hall. As a result of that sit-in, the university agreed to divest from, I believe, 3 companies that were doing business with South Africa. During that entire period, I'm talking about from 1974 through '78, outside police were never called in to the university. They weren't even called in when we had the sit-in. So I was appalled and outraged when I heard that police had been called onto campus to arrest graduate and undergraduate students for participating in this current movement for divestment from Israel.
And how did it work then? Were you negotiating with the administration in the 1970s? You were the leader of this movement.
Well, I have to say, in all truth, that there was a lot of recalcitrance. For several years, the president of the university at that time, President Bowen, wouldn't meet with us. It wasn't until 1978 when they saw that the majority of the campus and the faculty were in support of divestment, would they even listen to us? And it wasn't until we had the sit-in that they actually agreed to meet our key demand, which was for divestment. And then they only did so partially. And I have to say that the movement continued after 1978 with new student leaders. In fact, the following year, there was a sit-in at Firestone University.
Where is Firestone?
Firestone University is the major library on Princeton's campus. So I'm trying to make the point that the struggle against apartheid continued for many years, even after 1978. But I have to say I'm really proud of the students that have been protesting and the students that are on hunger strike. I wrote a letter 2 days ago to President Eisgruber, condemning bringing outside police onto the campus, condemning the arrests of the students, supporting their demands, and also calling for total amnesty for all the students and any faculty that might be involved.
And Eisgruber, did he respond?
He has not responded yet, no.
So talk about the position you're taking. This is pretty unusual for a Democratic Party senatorial candidate. Well, in your case, in June, in the primary, again, you're running against Andy Kim, the Congress member, and Patricia Campos Medina. You and Campos Medina have called for a ceasefire. But you're calling for an uncommitted vote when it comes to the president.
Absolutely. First of all, I'm totally opposed to the Biden administration's approach to this genocidal war in Gaza. There must be an immediate and permanent ceasefire, and the United States should cease any military aid to Israel. Why am I urging people to vote uncommitted for president? In the Democratic primary, people will be able to vote for president, U.S. Senate, and other offices. For president, there are two candidates, of course, Joe Biden, someone else, but there's a third choice, and that choice is uncommitted. I'm going to vote uncommitted. I urge other people to vote uncommitted because I think that is a strong way to send a strong message to the Biden administration that we are totally dissatisfied with his approach, that we want the war to end, that we want a ceasefire, and we want an end to genocide in Gaza. So that's why I'm going to vote uncommitted, and I'm urging others to do the same.
And if you were U.S. Senator today, what would you be doing?
Well, I'd be voting against any aid, any more aid, as Andy Kim did. Andy Kim voted for, he says he's for ceasefire, but then he voted for $26 billion more to go to this genocidal war in Gaza. So I would be voting against any further military aid to Israel until this war comes to an end and until the occupation comes to an end.
And your assessment of Bob Menendez, the U.S. Senator whose seat you are running for, Bob Menendez, who's been charged multiple corruption charges, though has not yet been tried, is about to be.
Right. Well, I think Menendez, he's indicted himself. His behavior has led to, this is the second time that he's been indicted. He was indicted and tried in 2018, and now this is happening again. He's indicted on corruption charges and possibly being an agent of a foreign government. But the other point is that he and Senator Cory Booker have both supported this genocidal war in Gaza. They have both voted for hundreds of billions of dollars of military aid, which has resulted in more than 35,000 people being killed, 15,000 of those being children and women, and 19,000 orphans, 1 million people displaced, and mass starvation being used as a weapon. So Menendez saw the handwriting on the wall, so he's not running for re-election.
Finally, just going back to the approach to these protest encampments around the country, when you took over Nassau Hall, like Columbia, the takeover of Hamilton Hall, which also happened in the 60s around the Vietnam War, there were no arrests, the police didn't move in, and you got a number of your demands met.
That's right. That is correct. Now, I don't want to give a misimpression. There were protests on college campuses for divestment from South Africa across the country, and there were situations on other campuses when the police were called in. It did not happen at Princeton University for a whole host of reasons.
Democracy Now! Is funded by viewers like you. Please give today at democracynow.org/give.